Hi, everyone out there. I wanted to take some time to introduce myself, give you a little bit of background about who I am and what this channel is really about. My name is Todd Rayner, and I am the CEO of Dark Space Studio. That studio really is my wife and I, who kind of more of the silent partner, but she is a big influence on what I do and how I really, the final product that you see. She influences a lot of that. She helps proofread and edit and things of that nature. She is my booth babe when I do conventions. So, a lot of you out there that have seen me at conventions, you probably have met my wife. She's a huge supporter, and I wouldn't be doing this without her. That aside, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on who I am, my experience, and what I do. Way back in the day, I've always been a creative person growing up. I remember being told that I would, draw things as a young kid, and it really wasn't until about my teenage years that I started getting into comics. G.I. Joe was my first comics that I started reading. And, late 80s, early 90s, when the image boom happened, that, as with many artists, influenced me a lot to create my own character, think about what stories I can tell. And, I kind of just snowballed from there. I ended up creating Ice Pick when I was about 15, 16, maybe 17. And I literally just drew on, 8.5 by 11, sheets of paper that I would cut down to comic book size. Cause back in those days, it was much harder to self publish or even make a comic, let alone get it published. So I did that for quite a while. Life kind of took its course, I guess you could say. Ended up having two kids, and they also have helped motivated me and helped me stay motivated to continue to do what I do now, all these years later. And I ended up meeting my current wife now, late 90s, and she was not a comic book fan, so we would end up going to comic shows together, and it kind of introduced her a little bit to that medium, and she really fell in love with it. And she has her specific characters that she really likes, like all of us. You can see behind me I got Wolverine, Batman, and above I have a in the middle there I have a Spider-Man as well. My sister did those, so shout out to her. But those are my favorite characters. So for me, it just blossomed from kind of doing artwork late at night or in school after my classwork was done into taking it a little bit more serious. I would put together portfolio pages, take them to conventions in the early 2000s, and never really saw much traction there. But that didn't discourage me. I would say, do not let that discourage you, because it's editors' jobs and people that you talk to at shows or even nowadays online. It's their job to be critical and tough on you, and to really point out the holes in, whether it be pencils, inks, whatever type of artwork, screenwriting, scripts, things like that. So it really didn't discourage me, and I kept plugging away. I went to college and I started learning Photoshop and digital coloring, and that came a little bit more natural to me. It came a little bit easier, I would say, than penciling. So I really dipped my toes into the indie scene, I want to say in the early 2010s, roughly. Started picking up a few jobs here and there as an indie colorist, started working with other writers, and really networking out to where I could at that time. It was definitely, social media was not what it was back then. So it was pretty hard to find forums and to sift through who's kind of like a real person that means business that's going to pay you. I ended up finding a little bit of work in the early 2010s. And, that just kind of, again, motivated me to continue working on my characters. And 2016, I was working with a writer, and we ended up, he kind of had his pseudo publishing company back then. And I started working on Ice Pick. So I really did, as many of you know, or those that are new to this channel may not have known, I ended up creating my first comic book, and I will be doing a series on that. And that first comic book was called Ice Pick. It really was a challenge for me to do everything myself. At the time, the finances can always be a struggle for a lot of us, that are getting into comic book publishing. This was even still before it was much easier today than it was even in 2016. So I ended up doing the entire book myself, writing it, drawing, coloring, lettering, publishing. I had to learn how to letter because I didn't really know how to do that. Even to this day, I wouldn't say that my lettering is top tier or great. Wouldn't say my art is necessarily top tier or great either. But it's you come to terms as an artist to do the best that you can at that moment and when you can. And for me, I just had to accept that moment. Like, yes, were there some things looking back that I would change? Absolutely. I think most artists, if not all of us, have that feeling. For me, that's what I ended up doing. Once issue 4 was done, I did a trade paperback of the first 4 issues. I then pursued telling Annabelle's story. Adam, Beyonce's name is Annabelle, and I told her story. I wanted it to come out a little bit quicker, so I ended up hiring an art team, and finances were not quite as much of a struggle as they were early on with Ice Pick, and that led to getting that book out much sooner. Having a really cool art style and a good art team on that book is was crucial, and I think that really helped the success of that book. And then I took on the next character, which is Luke, and I'm telling his story. So for me, it's one of those things where I created Dark Space Studio as a place that I can publish books. I created this YouTube channel. Feel free to browse around. There's quite a few videos. There's a lot of how-to videos. There's a lot of videos of me talking about my process, what I'm thinking about, how I do things. I have the Inkwell podcast, which is new. So I would say please check that out. And that's where I'm interviewing creatives and giving them space to tell their story, because I think all of us creatives, hopefully you've stuck around for the last several minutes and listened to a little bit of my story. All of us creatives have a unique story. And I think it's important to have space to tell that story to help hopefully motivate other creative people to either start being creative or to continue to be creative and pursue that industry or that career path. It's not always easy, but I think a lot of us love what we do, and that's important. So we keep chugging along to tell great stories for all the readers out there, to produce great art that a lot of the fans do enjoy. I will say real quick before I wrap up that this is going to be the website where you can find all of the really cool things that I publish, a lot of my original art. You can see Ice Pick, Annabelle, and Luke there. And you can order all the books online. You can order all the trades. You can also, I have original art that you can look at. And that original art is a lot of the characters that I draw. And there's also a lot of fan art. I'm always open for commissions for the most part. You can always reach out to me through the website or through, social media sites, even through this YouTube channel. So please feel free to do so. And, I appreciate all the support that anyone out there is providing, whether it be via subscribing to this YouTube channel or meeting me at a show. I do this because I'm passionate about telling good stories and having, fans out there read these great stories, hopefully that they all enjoy. So thank you for hanging out and listening to me kind of ramble on for several minutes. And I hope there's some value in this little intro video. And I encourage you to go ahead and, look at all the other videos that I have and reach out to me if you have any questions or would like to hire me for any work. Thank you.